right. I've been thinking a lot recently about the mental health system in this country, which, to be brutally honest, isn't actually fit for purpose.
Why is that?
Because the waiting lists are too long. When you do finally get to see someone, very often the therapy or the advice is inappropriate. So it begs the question, who's writing this stuff? You know, have they ever actually experienced any mental health challenges, or are they written by psychiatrists and psychologists who know all the theory, who haven't actually been there? It falls down. My daughter's just transitioning from CAMS, which is the adolescent mental health team, to the adult mental health team in October. And we've just discovered that there's a huge chasm, because the adolescent mental health team turn them over at 17, but the adult team won't take them until their 18th birthday. So she's in no man's land, in care at the moment, coming home in a week's time, and there's nobody actually responsible for her. Yeah, so, you know, there are huge failings, and the crisis team, the basis of how they work is fantastic. They're there for people who are suicidal or suffering extreme mental health issues. But when you actually get there, you're taken into a very clinical room with a doctor who's got notes on his lap and another lady, probably, or man, who's got a notebook. And really what they focus on is, are you feeling suicidal?
Yes or
now,
no?
Yeah.
Check.
Yeah, exactly. And then they'll talk about medication. And really that's kind of it. You know, they might do a bit of mindfulness with you if you're lucky, or whatever, but it's not doing anything. And what interests me, we have the National Health Service, and I love the National Health Service. I think we're so lucky to have free health care in this country.
Yeah.
But it begs the question, do you in America actually get better health care, especially mental health care, because you have private policies? Do you have more choices to who you see, and does it actually work better for you?
It sounds very much like our healthcare.
Oh,
you know, it's.
I was really hoping you were going to say no. It's great.
You know, yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to wait a very long time to get the help that you need, and a lot of times, like you said, someone just goes in to see someone who might have no experience. It's just going through a checklist. And what do we do with that? You know, my friend Wendy said something really powerful to me, that she used to work, I think as a supervisor in a mental health facility, and she would put HB in all the patients' records, and the doctors would ask, what does HB mean? And she said, human being. You know, this is a human...
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and when you are struggling, there's a human connection that's needed. And sometimes being able just to sit with a person, is all that's needed. One thing I do like in the USA that we have is we have different advocacy groups that have what we call peers. So people who aren't licensed professionals, but maybe someone like myself who's been through some stuff, and if you're struggling, you could talk to me, and I'm not going to give you any professional advice, but I can talk to you as someone who's been there and listen with you. Actually, the peer movement is really growing in the U.S. So that's
a really good idea.
It's a great idea, and it reminds you this is a human thing, that we have to connect on a human level with people. I mean, imagine if people in mental health crisis got to sit with someone who would look them in the eyes. I mean, okay, that's hard enough right there. Look them in the eyes and put down the paper and listen. Just listen with an open heart, not give advice. And one of the things I put in my book is, what do you say to someone who's struggling? And I believe that the worst thing people could do is give us advice when you're in a bad place.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, but the two things that I found, if you ask, how can I support you, and shut up, you might get someone talking. The other thing you can say to them is, help me understand.
Yes.
And shut up after that, just to let them talk.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen when people are in crisis. So overall, in the world, we need to do a better job with dealing with mental health crises. And this is maybe actually not a UK thing or a USA thing. This is I
think it's global.
It's a global thing, and the World Health Organization is starting to really recognize the connection between mental health challenges and poverty. Going back to what you were saying, though, I think it's really important for everyone to take a more human approach to it. And it's not a money thing. It's not a...
No, it's not.
It really, really isn't. And that's going to be the game changer.
Yeah, it is. And interestingly, my daughter was under the crisis team last year. She'd had a really bad breakup with a boyfriend, and she was suicidal. No two ways about it. And my son and I were with her 24/7. I slept with her because we were so scared to leave her. And we went to the mental health team, the crisis team, and they discussed medication with her and asked her if she was suicidal. And she sat there and said, no, I'm fine. And I said, no, you're not fine. But she felt she had to say, no, okay, even with the crisis team. And I asked her the other day, I said, what actually would have helped you? And she said, first of all, she said, they treated me like a silly young lady with boyfriend problems, as opposed to realizing that the abandonment of that particular relationship actually projected back to her father's suicide and that abandonment issue. And there was a whole load of stuff coming out here. It wasn't just about the boyfriend. Instead, they did make her feel like, well, it's just, everyone has boyfriend problems, And she said the other thing is, she said, Mum, I needed to feel safe. She said, I needed a hug in a mug. And I thought, she's right. And it's interesting because she bought a handmade mug a few years ago, which is hidden in the cupboard and only comes out when someone's in crisis. And when anyone in the house is in crisis, we get out the crisis mug and we make a cup of tea and we give it to the person in crisis and we sit with them and say, okay, we're here. Whatever you need, we're here. And do you know what? That's all that's needed. And the mug is just a symbol, really, of the fact that we're all there for them.
And this is actually a message, too, for people who have someone in their family who's struggling. A lot of times, I know with myself, being the one in the family who's been struggling, some people just want to get away, and that's the worst thing. That makes us feel isolated because absolutely. Mental health challenges is one thing I've said to people, and this is one of the reasons I believe stigma exists. They are confusing and frustrating. It's not like hurting your wrist, where you can pinpoint the thing. It's something that you eventually discover over time, typically through behavior or someone discovers for you. And so when it comes to that, it's really important to understand that they're confusing for both the person struggling and their loved ones. And just being able to, again, have that human connection, hanging out with somebody, sitting next to them, could be the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, it is. It's just being around. But the other thing that we recognize in our house, and we're a big family and we've all struggled with various mental health issues over the years. I struggled with depression. 4 of my children struggled terribly with depression, and the others struggle with depression to a lesser degree. And the other thing we recognize is that it's hard for the person who's in that place and who's struggling, but it's also hard for the people around you because it's exhausting. And if, for example, Laurie is struggling and I'm there for her and I'm trying to support her, she will often say to me, Mum, I know how exhausting this is. At the moment I'm fine, go and do something for you. And the same if I'm struggling, I'll say, I'm okay here in my little bubble. You go to the gym or whatever you want to do, because we understand each other's roles. We're all sufferers, if you like, and carers as well. And caring for someone with mental health issues really it's draining because you can't actually do anything. And that's part of what's draining, is that if someone's broken their wrist, you can ice it and you can put plaster on it and you can help them with things because they've one hand down and all the rest of it. When someone's got mental health issues, it's so hard to know how to help them. But we are so unique in terms of our mental health and the way our brains work. And it's not just the split between people who are autistic and neurotypical or whatever you want to call them, or dyslexic or whatever. We need everybody and everybody's brains, because with that diverse range of brains, including the ones who have mental health issues, we obtain a complete whole, and actually we finish each other off and create something that's beautiful and dynamic.